Separate your saucer section and get ready for this week's
Initial Thoughts. Part 1. Initial Thoughts. Part 1. Initial Thoughts.
Hello again, Trekkies! While I've skipped reviewing the bulk of this season due to low view counts, I couldn't let a Star Trek series finale pass by. So today, we're talking about the 10th episode of Discovery Season 5, Life Itself. For anyone that's watched me for a while, you'll know I've been one of Disco's biggest cheerleaders over the years. Unfortunately, I'm not overly impressed with this ending. I don't hate it the way I do Enterprise's finale, These Are the Voyages, but that's a very low bar to clear. This is the perfect short for this episode. Well, except for the fact that Grudge, while name-dropped, does not get an on-screen appearance, and that's my first of many dislikes for the episode. And while we're on the topic of missed opportunities for appearances, here's 3 more dislikes for Oo, Detmer, and Reno, only making an appearance in the very end dream sequence Goodbye. As a whole, I'm really disappointed that it felt like Owoshikun and Detmer were just written out and replaced this season. While Jet got a few good scenes and we learned a fair amount about her, it just doesn't feel right to not include her in the episode itself. Let's start to balance these negatives out with a collective like for all the recurring characters we did get, like Nan, Admiral Vance, Kovich, and Tarina. We could have used a cameo by President Rillick, but I can live with that non-appearance. My next like is for Tilly as First Officer coming up with good plans for how to beat the Breen, and getting some manner of redemption for the last time she was in the role of Number 1, and lost Discovery to Osira. Saru gets a big like for dissuading Tahal through diplomacy. Considering how many things in the last 2 episodes were designed to pile on and add more to the tension of the plot, I actually thought Saru de-escalating the situation through some conversation is the most Federation solution to the problem. The tailor in me also wants to give another like for the outfit Saru's been wearing since last week. It's very unusual and fits him well. It's like a men's blazer connected to a skirt, and I dig that a lot. Coming off that small cheeky like, here's a small reoccurring dislike for flamethrowers on the bridge. This isn't the first time I've given out a dislike for this, but thankfully it will be the last from this death trap of a heat dissipation system. While I'm glad, with the exception of Locke, that everyone makes it through this safe and sound, I've actually got a dislike for no one on the main cast dying. These past 2 episodes seem to leave the possibility that Saru, Burnham, Maul, Book, or Culber may not make it back from this mission. Last season, they seemed to foreshadow that Detmer would die, and thankfully that didn't pay off. But if you're going to allude this hard to a final act tragedy, it's a literary crime to not make a sacrifice. I have a dislike for the second fight scene between Burnham and Maul for a pile of reasons. Firstly, the whole progenitor world feels like filler and unnecessary tension, but particularly when Burnham just starts the fight again after they'd started working together, and then at the end of it has the audacity to tell Maul to stand down and stop, even though she's the one that started the fight, which feels like a fight scene for the sake of a fight scene. Some of the CGI bits here in the progenitor world also feel like updated effects we saw in the V'ger cloud in the motion picture. And it feels like they're just here for the sake of cramming visual effects in. I have a like for Discovery separating into a saucer and drive section, with a neat plan to spore jump the Breen to the edge of the galaxy. While it was once considered in TOS, this is the first time we've seen a ship that isn't fully meant to be separated, split into 2 sections. Heading into the resolution of the season arc, I did enjoy the idea that the tech isn't actually from the progenitors. They're just the last ones to successfully use it, but they merely found it, created by a much older race. I really thought Burnham was going to be turned into full-on space Jesus, you know, the Cisco called home to the Celestial Temple and all. But instead, what she chooses to do, I'm conflicted on. I agree that the tech seems too powerful for any one person to take control of, but I'm also kind of with Stamets that letting it be destroyed by a black hole is a huge loss to science. So I'm not going to give it either a like or a dislike here, but I wanted to mention it. I do, however, have a like for Burnham's montage of creation, and especially for her evolution from the orphan child to mutineer prisoner to captain of Discovery. It was one of the only moments of finality in the episode that really resonated for me. So this leads us into the post-show, which has some good pieces I'll get into in a moment, but overall, I have a dislike for the majority of this ending. It just drags to the end, and reminds me that in Voyager's finale, it might have been nice to get just a few more minutes of runtime, but also leaving the audience wanting more is a better play than adding a bunch of superfluous elements that make me just want to skip to the very end. That said, what does work and gets a like is the big reveal for Kovich actually being good old time-traveling crewman Daniels. Of all the people it could be, I did not see that one coming, which is a pleasant surprise in this generally predictable show. In his office, we see a Mirror Universe Terran dagger, a Dustbuster-style TNG Season 1 phaser, a bottle of Chateau Picard from Burnham's original time of 2240, presumably Geordi's visor, and presumably Cisco's baseball. I probably missed something here, but I'm kind of surprised nothing from the NX-01 Enterprise was highlighted. Where's Archer's water polo ball? Anyway, the other gigantic like in the post-show is finally getting to the wedding of Saru and Tarina, at which Vance addresses Saru as Admiral, so it seems he has yet another change of title. I was also very happy to see Burnham and Book finally cement their relationship after being in a holding pattern since Cleveland went rogue last season, even if I'm not super impressed with the bit where they've grown old together. The only thing I like about that was seeing Book's world route grown into a new tree. I will, though, give an obligatory like for the shuttle their son Leto comes to pick up his Admiral mother in, being Shuttle 47. I will finish the summation with one final like, also for removing the A from Disco's registry and setting up the events of Calypso at the very end. I was worried earlier in the season that the only nod we'd get to the wonderful short trek was the idea that Zora may have dreamt it on her own. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't a bad episode. But it's not a great series finale. In fact, it's probably the second worst finale in Trek. It's serviceable and wraps up enough of the loose threads to not be terrible, but it's not wowing me the way many of the franchise's other shows have wrapped. I mean, TNG Season 7 mostly felt like the writers were out of ideas, but finished strong with one of the top 25 best episodes in all of Trek. Meanwhile, my initial ranking for Life itself, out of more than 800 live-action episodes of the franchise, is somewhere between 300 and 400. I'll be back with all the Easter egg callbacks of Lower Decks whenever that premieres, and join me and other Trek YouTubers live this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern as we pick this episode apart more extensively, and every Sunday for various topics. Until I see you again, I've been your host, Dustin Wing.